Good afternoon, Year 6. I hope you're well and have had a good lesson set today with your English, your maths, and your reading. In science today, we're going to be continuing our knowledge or our journey through the knowledge of about Carl Linnaeus and how he classified different organisms. So, there's a Swedish gentleman who just developed this system of classification in the 1800s. And we're going to think today to be successful. What we'll need to be able to do is understand why he thought a system would help. We're going to consider the choices he made of language. We're going to see how he used those points to classify the different organisms, and then we're going to classify some animals and other organisms using the two-word system based on his criteria. Okay, first bit of recall. Just remembering some of the language points have been covered up within this classification system. So there's the 7 steps that we looked at, and I know you developed your own mnemonics last week, looking at those 7 steps. So see if you can identify what numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 are covering. What words are they covering? Pause the video while you have a think. And if you want to write them down, great. Okay, number 1, kingdom. Okay, so kingdom. The kingdom, all those animals together are all part of the animal kingdom. The second one, the phylum, is the second layer of that taxonomy that Carl Linnaeus developed, which is the vertebrates, so only those which have backbone. Third layer is mammals sit within the class, okay? The 4th layer, then the meat eaters amongst those mammals. So now we're getting rid of some of the mammals such as the koala and the camel, which don't eat meat. Now we've got the order. Okay. The 5th element here, after the family, we've then got the 5th element, which is the genus. Okay, and that's one of the 2 elements of the binomial or naming system. It's really important we remember the genus, which is the typing, and the species. And here we've got the species example, which is the lion. Okay, so that's a bit of recall about those levels, those steps within the Linnaeus classification system. Okay. I'd like you to think about for vocabulary, and you've got an element to do this on your sheet, is you've got these 4 words which are key to understanding the classification system which Carl Linnaeus developed. Taxonomy, species, system, and binomial. And I think I misspoke that earlier, binomial, okay? And remember what we said last week about binomial being, bi being synonymous with 2, okay? So bicycle, okay? And we might think about bipartisan when two political parties join together. So bi and yeah. Okay. So now what we've got are synonyms at the bottom. We've got organisation, 2 named classes, and catalogue. So those red words can go in the synonym section for each one of the original words. So taxonomy is synonymous with one of these words. Species is synonymous with one of these words. System is synonymous with one of these words. And binomial is synonymous with one of these words as well. Okay. Once you put the synonym in, see if you can identify from your learning last week what the definition would be, please. Okay. First task then. If you could do that now, please, and pause the video whilst you do it. Okay, and that definition, you need to try and think about what you know of taxonomy and how he was a taxonomist and therefore sorted and classified. What a species might be, you might want to look at the earlier diagram of the levels where different animals are categorized together. System, think about other times when you've seen the word system used in your lives. And binomial, think about how nomial refers to names. So what bi means, so how many names will it be? Can you think about how many names a binomial system would have? Okay. Right, guys. Within those 2 names in the binomial system, we've got the idea of genus. Okay, so the genus is the penultimate level of that system. Okay, it's a group of organisms that have certain characteristics in common, but can be split further, can be further subdivided. And then we've got the species. The useful definition of a species is a group of organisms which can be interbred to produce fertile offspring. Okay, it sounds very grown up, but basically, a species, if a horse and a donkey had a baby together, that baby wouldn't be able to have babies. Okay. Whereas if a horse and a horse have a baby together, that horse could have babies. Okay. So fertile is the idea that something can produce more offspring. Okay. So a species is something that can produce more offspring after it has been born. Okay. It's not the end of the line. If you think about the lines of royal ascent. Okay. Now we've got here, so when I say species, it doesn't always mean animals. So we've got here this lovely flower. Okay, I'm waiting for you all to bring me some flowers. Keep waiting, Mr. Three. Okay, and this is called a. Here we go. Geranium pedunculus florus called dichotomo erectol folis quinquesupa partitis incisis summis sessilibus. You don't need the silly accent, but you do get the point. It's a name and a half. It's a lot of words. Okay, so therefore, describe that using the system that Calinius described, we'd have the geranium maculatum. Okay, and it's a lot easier to understand what that means. Okay, it's also a lot easier to say. Okay, so what's important with that then is that if I'm talking to somebody else, I can now understand what they're saying, and I don't need to spend 25 minutes writing down the name of something. Okay, so it's a lot easier to have a shorter name that other people can understand, a binomial name. Okay. So every name has a story, though, to it. Okay. Now, he used Latin for his names, but many names were also Latinized, which means changed into Latin versions of other languages, such as Greek. Okay, so if we think of the ancient Greeks and their pantheon, and then we've got that flag of ancient Greece, he used Latin because it wasn't just that it was the language of science, but it was a language which throughout the whole world 310 years ago people could understand. Okay, it wasn't a language which just certain areas, such as, for example, Mandarin and Cantonese within China or Japanese within Japan, certain languages which hadn't spread around the globe. Now, Latin, as we see, still now permeates some of our language. Now, some of these you might not think you know, but carpe diem is quite a common phrase. Okay, seize the day. In this, absentia means while absent. So absent obviously links to Latin. Ipso facto, you might have heard that by the very fact. Okay, so if I say this work is not good, ipso facto, you're going to do some homework at lunchtime. It means because, really. Mea culpa means, oh, it's my fault. So when I do something wrong, you say, mea culpa. And you might still be in trouble, but your teacher might be impressed that you know a bit of Latin. So some of the Latin still permeates, still links to a lot of the words that we use today, which shows how powerful it was 310 years ago across the world. And that's why Carl Linnaeus used Latin. Okay, and it meant that everybody could understand words that he used when he was naming animals. Although he avoided long descriptions with lots and lots of words in them, these two-word names still told us something about the plant, okay, or the animal, because they weren't just random words that have been picked out of nowhere. Okay, they might have been chosen for different reasons: what it looked like, where it lived, who had found it, so who had discovered it, or what it does, so features of its character. Or it might be that it was named after the scientist or the explorer who had been important in its discovery. Okay, so we've got an example here, which is what we call a ladybird, or in America they call a ladybug. Okay, he looked at its species and he looked at its color, and he used some of this information in its binomial name. Okay, so if we think about this, it's called we call it a ladybird, like we say, but in America, even now they call it a ladybug if they're not using the Linnean naming for it. Okay, some countries call it a lady beetle. Okay, so there's lots of people might get a little bit confused by these different terminologies. Therefore, we see the benefit of that Linnean system. Its binomial name is, here we go, Cocciniella septempunctata. Okay, so Cocciniella septempunctata. Okay, my Latin isn't quite as strong as some people's, maybe. And that genus, then, that grouping that it's part of, is Coccella, which means bright red. So it's something which is bright red. And then the species is the second part of it means 7 points. 7 points. So if you think about the points on the map, okay, so 7 points. Sept, if you think you're French, you see the link there with Latin and French. Septempunctata. And punctat, if you think about punctuation, you see the way these words link to each other, even now. Now, it's really important we have all of these because, okay, these have gone the wrong way. Let's just get rid of all of them. Okay, now the point here is that across the world, there's lots and lots of different terms that are used for the same being. So if we look on the left on the map over there, we can see a map of Northern America. And we can see that in Canada and the USA, these beasts are called woodbugs, bolt boulders, sow bugs, doodle bugs, or pillbugs. And then if we look to the right, the map on the right-hand side shows us the United Kingdom. And we can see there that within the United Kingdom, even, which is a relatively small country compared to other countries within the world, within the United Kingdom, we've got granny greys, gramasso, chuggy pigs, cheesy bugs, wood pigs, chisel bugs, and slaters. And I know that Mrs. Spring's mum refers to these as slaters because she's from elements within Scotland where they would be running around. And when we looked in our garden, and my children were looking at our garden with Mrs. Spring's mum, she said, "Have you seen the Slaters?" And we had no idea what she was talking about. And that's one of the problems if we don't have a common naming system. So we see then Slaters, and they're actually called Slaters in Australia as well, and they're also called Butchie Boys, which I think is a fantastic name for them. But we know them as the woodlouse. And because there's all these different names to the woodlouse, people wouldn't be able to compare their knowledge of them if they were looking at being scientists about these different places. What we've now got is the idea that they've got a standardized naming. What when we understand that, it allows us to see something that we might share with another scientist. So if I, as a scientist, I'm trying to find something out about the woodlouse, what I can find out about it, I know is going to be the same as somebody is going to help somebody in Australia, in Scotland, in New Zealand, in Canada, because I'm not going to be thinking it's a different animal. Because I know the organism's the same one, because I've used the Latin terminology, I'm going to understand better how to investigate it. Okay. Sorry, these blue boxes went here, there, and everywhere. Now, today, with your learning, what I'm going to ask you to do is, first of all, do some reading relating to why certain organisms got some name. So the top one's about what they do. The second one is about they're named by people. Third one about appearance. So you can see that beautiful butterfly. And then the fourth one is about where they live. So you're going to think about these animals and you're going to read about why they might have been given the names they are in that binomial system. You're then going to think and try and complete these sentences. So having a system for the naming of organisms was important because, so why was it important? Show me that you've reflected on that. If who created that system again? What was his name? And it's luckily at the top of the screen right now. If he hadn't created a system, what would the problem have been? What would scientists have lost that they might need? What was the key element of the system? So what was the really simple thing? If you think about that flower we looked at earlier that I tripped over trying to say the name of, what was the key element of the system? And then what was the other element of the system with the seven? And you looked at with your mnemonics last week. So that's the first piece of work. What I'd like you to then do is you've got a couple of classifications to do. One about the organisms which are flowers and one about organisms which are animals. Okay. And what I'd like you to try and do is identify those different animals and sort and complete those tasks. Finally, what I need you to have a look at is thinking about your midpoint. So we're halfway through our work on classifying organisms. And I want you to show me that you've understood some of the elements that we've looked at here. So there's four tasks to do on the sheet, and it's really important you do have a go at that, because otherwise, when I'm going forward teaching you over the next few weeks with this topic, I don't know what you've done. I don't know how you've understood it. So I'd like you to have a really good go at that. And normally I say it's fine to get mums and dads to help, but with this one, can you have a go on your own, please? It'd be really useful to see what you can do on your own. Okay. Right, year six. Thank you very much for attending and thinking about that. Back about that woodlouse and think about how useful it was that Carl Linnaeus all those years ago conceived a system that allowed us to, just using two names, the genus and the species, that binomial classification tool that allowed us to classify all those different animals. Looking forward to seeing the work that you complete from today. Thank you very much for looking and listening today. See you soon.